Sarah Meixel with the Pig Site, and today we're here with Pieter Langendijk. He is a senior research scientist with Trouw Nutrition. Pieter has worked with Trouw for 7 years, focusing on sow R&D and specifically how nutrition plays a role in improving sow performance. Prior to his work with Trouw, he conducted research in Australia at a public R&D institute. So thanks for being with us today, Pieter.
Hi, Sarah. It's great to be with you today.
Very good. Let's talk a little bit about trends in sow management. Kind of what's the biggest issue that you are, or I guess that the industry is experiencing right now?
If you look at trends in prolificacy over the last 20 years, you see that genetic selection has increased litter size tremendously. If I look at Europe, we've probably gained about 4 to 5 piglets in the last 20 years, which is a lot. And some genetics, I think we see an increase of up to 7, 8 piglets over the last 20 years. So the litter size has increased incredibly in sows, and that's a real challenge when it comes to managing sows, not only for the sows, but also for the people working with the sows. Yeah.
Very good. And kind of what can producers really do to help manage these big litters on their farms?
Yeah, the thing with large litters is that with increasing litter size, we see that the extra number of piglets that has been added to the litter over the last 20 years is mostly small piglets. So this increase has come at a cost of birth weight. So the average birth weight has really dropped over the last 20 years, and also the variation in birth weight within the litter has dropped. So we're dealing with larger litters, but also at the same time more small piglets, and that's the real challenge. So just imagine you are a small piglet in a large litter,
right?
Because the litter is large. It takes longer for the sow to farrow that litter, and that poses challenges to the piglets, especially the ones born at the end of the farrowing process. So the last ones in the litter, by the time they are born, they have probably suffered from oxygen insufficiency. So they are born in a challenged condition. Once they're born, they'll try and start looking for the udder to start consuming colostrum. But at the same time, the rest of the litter is already at the udder. So right. The piglet that's last in the farrowing process will have to compete with her brother and sisters for that colostrum, which is already starting to dry out, because the brothers and sisters have drunk 2/3 of the colostrum already. So imagine you are the small piglet suffering from oxygen insufficiency, trying to get to the udder and get some colostrum. It's really a challenge to survive the first days in life. And so those are really the problems that we are facing. And so when you're asking what can people do, it's really tackling birth weight. That's something we need to improve. We need to improve access of piglets to colostrum. And we need to create an environment for those small piglets in the first days of life to improve their chances of survival. So there are ways to improve birth weight nutritionally. During gestation, we can develop concepts that improve placentation, placenta size, but also fetal development towards the end of gestation, in order to increase the average birth weight, but also hopefully reduce the variation within the litter. That's one thing, tackling birth weight. The other thing would be to improve colostrum production by the sow. We know there are ways to do that. Just one example would be increasing the feed allowance in the last days before farrowing. Normally, when we move sows from the gestation unit to the lactation unit, people will tend to drop the feed allowance, which is strange because from research, we know that if we bump up the feed level, we actually see an increase in colostrum production. And if we can increase the colostrum production, we know that even for that small piglet at the end of the farrowing process, there may still be a sufficient amount of colostrum available. So bumping up the feed allowance is another strategy that we can follow to improve chances of survival. The other aspect I mentioned is improve the microenvironment.
Right.
So that would include things like providing a heat temperature source, so either a heat mat or a heat lamp light, to make sure that when piglets are born, they dry up quickly and they don't lose too much heat and experience a temperature drop. That's another measure we can take. The last one I would like to mention, I think, is fostering strategies. If a sow gives birth to 20 piglets, she's obviously not going to be able to feed all 20. So you need to put fostering strategies in place to accommodate the surplus of piglets, either by moving them to other sows or creating mixed litters or provide supplemental feeding.
Very good. And that really balances out kind of colostrum and things like that, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, natural colostrum is always the best thing for a piglet.
Right.
But if that's limited, then you need to find other ways to get supplemental nutrition into the piglet. Absolutely.
Good. And what's that minimum amount of colostrum every piglet needs?
If we know from research that if you look at quantity of colostrum that's being consumed by individual piglets, that those that consume less than 250 grams are more likely to die in the first week of life. So 250 grams is sort of the golden threshold.
Right, kind of
anything above that, yeah, that's the golden line.
Very good. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for all the information today, Pieter.
Thanks for having me.
This is Sarah Mikesell with the Pig Site.